Hi, we're just going to get started, and I'm delighted to see a big crowd here, and it doesn't surprise me at all. My name is Catherine Barnett. I'm in the poetry faculty of the MFA, and I wanted to be sure to thank the president's office, the English department, Mike Rizzo, our program director, and my wonderful MFA colleagues, especially Donald, who's really pulled everything together for all of us, and Chris, who's on tech. And it's just a real privilege to introduce John Murillo, whose poems, as you'll hear tonight, are the Song and Story, Lament and Praise, Fury and Love. John grew up in Los Angeles. And when he was explaining to us, when he was 11, I think, he started, writing kind of rap lyrics. And by 17, he was in the studio recording. And then he went to Howard University. Then I don't know exactly what he did between those years and then when he came back for an MFA in his 30s. And his first book, Jump the Boogie, was published in 2010, and it was a finalist for the Cape Health Discovery Award and the PEN Open Book Award. His second collection, Contemporary American Poetry, was published by Florida in 2020 and won Kingsley House Award and the PSLV Foundation's Full Quartet Prize for the best sequence of the year, and that's for his middle sequence, Broken Promise Honor. He's associate professor at Wesleyan, where he directs the creative writing program. This past July, I had the fortune of attending a lecture that John gave, which he spoke about Duende, which he described as both a quality of passion or inspiration, and also a supernatural being or spirit. He said the characteristics of Duende were 1, irrational, 2, earthy, 3, having a heightened awareness of death, and 4, possessing a dash of the diabolical. He said, we are inspired by the angel who guides, the muse who dictates and prompts, and by Duende, where the real struggle takes place. In an interview, he said, Grammarly doesn't have Duende. And he urged us to embrace, in a lecture, he urged us to embrace what is mysterious or unknown. He spoke about the trickster and trouble. I was riveted, alert, and awakened, as I am whenever I hear him read, as I believe you will read tonight also. If a catfish could write poems, Murillo said, when asked to explain the socio-political commentary in his work, so his poems might have some water in them, some baited hooks, seaweed, and wetlands. He continued, my poems engage racism, my poems engage racism, violence, and systemic injustice, because that's where I live. It's where we all live. Just that some of us don't have the luxury of turning away. He said he wasn't in the sequence, but I think in all his work, he said he wasn't striving for any grand affirmation of outrage. But I just wrote like I live with my eyes open. Among his greatest achievements are his sustained, digressive meditations that address public issues through private vulnerability, and a fluid associative intelligence that sweeps into his long poems the personal, the tangible, and the philosophical. In his poems that acknowledge precursor influences, he pays homage to the history and tradition of poetry, and at the same time he updates and then subtle this, making use of whatever will help him, as he said, quote, sing new songs. In an earlier interview, he said, quote, in a world that serves, even if it may not speak, so in a world that serves to dehumanize, I think I'm just telling you this because he is so inspiring to me. And it's a quiet, showy inspiration that I find will help everybody in this room, or I hope and I believe. So he said, in a world that serves to dehumanize, any act of creation, of making, is an attempt to hold on to something essential. So each song, each poem is a reported instant of humanity asserting thought. So sometimes when you're like, you don't know why you're running, I think that's just a beautiful thing to hang on to. It's an instant of humanity asserting itself. We just have two more paragraphs. Patience animates the poem, which move with both abandon and precision. They are lit, the poems are lit with intelligent vulnerability and urgent social critique, but they are not polemic, not argument, but persuasion arrived at through editing Ibrahim's song and storybook. His work calls us back to the origins of storytelling, the teller calling the listener in, the listener being the reason the storyteller feels compelled to speak. Perhaps one of the greatest achievements is the way he implicates himself in the updated morality tale. He's not the hero, he is fallible. It doesn't feel performative, but earning through Maria's renovation of confessional poetry. But just to close, I'd like to mention something about John's character from the book. And his ambition is for the work itself, what he calls, quote, the actual quiet, lonely, and often painful work of the soul. I don't think I need to tell you how grateful I am for this work and how much I'm looking forward to being here. He is welcome to me.
I've never spoken to anyone about this until now, until you. I slept once in a field beyond the riverbank, a block of nightjars watching over me. That was the summer a farmer found his daughter hanging in the hayloft and wished for the first time he had not touched her son. I wish I could say we were close, the girl and I, but only knew her to wave hello and walked her once halfway up the road before turning finally into my grandmother's yard. This was Ontario, California, 1983, which is to say there was no river and I wouldn't know a nightjar if it didn't. But the girl was real. And the day they found her, that was real. And the dress she wore, same as on our walk, periwinkle she called it. I called it blue. Blue with bright yellow flowers all over the dress and the flowers, they too were real. And on our walk, I remember we cut through the rail yard and came upon a dead coyote lying near the tracks. A frail and dusty heap of regret, he was companion to no one. Stone still, staring, our shadows stretched long and covering the animal. She told me something I want to say about loneliness. Something I've since forgotten, the way I've forgotten, though I can see her face as if she were standing right here, her very name. Let's call her Dolores, from dolor, Spanish for anguish. And whatever the sky, however lovely that afternoon, I remember mostly the wind, how a breeze unraveled what was left of a braid. And when I tried to brush from Dolores's brow a few loose strands, how she flinched, how she ran the rest of the way home, how I never saw her after that, except when they carried her from the barn. Her periwinkle dress, her blue legs and arms, and the fields ablaze with daisies. I spent the rest of that summer in the rail yard with my dead coyote, watching trains loaded and leaving. All summer long, I felt him with stones. All summer long, I've used the stone to spell the girl's name. Dolores, maybe, in the dirt. All summer long, fire ants crawled over and between each letter. Her name, now its own small town. A season of heat and heavy rains washed my coyote to nothing. Only teeth and a few stubborn bones that refused finally to go down. Weeks into autumn, someone found the father hanged from the same groaning tidings. The hayloft, black with bottle flies. But that was 1983, Ontario, California, which is to say the bottle flies are dead, so too the ants, and neither field nor barn is where I left it. I've never spoken to anyone about this until now, until you. I gathered a handful of my coyote's bones, his teeth, and strung them all on fishing wire. A talisman to ward off anguish. A talisman I hold out to you. Now, please come closer. Take this from my hand. Hey. Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's a beautiful city out there. There's so much to do. You guys are here, creating poems, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Hunter and Howard, for inviting me. Thank you, Catherine, for your passion for our work. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone that Michael, but not that, Tom, who's not here, and the students. So you guys are amazing. I had a great time with you. And thank you for that. So the recent poem from this book, Contemporary American Poetry, which was one of King's episodes. So it is. Afterwards, we'll have a little conversation, a little Q&A. Hope you guys have something to ask me. I hope you have answers for it. So I was going to read some poems and I'm not touching on between them. All confessions. Not sleepwalking, but waking still with my hand on a gun and the gun in a mouth and the mouth on the face of a man on his knees. Autumn of '89. And I'm standing in a Section 8 apartment parking lot, pistol cocked, and staring down at this man, then up into the mug of an old woman staring, watering the single sad flower to the left of her stoop, the flower also staring. My engine idling behind me, a slow moaning bass line and the bark of a dead rapper nudging me on, all to say someone's broken heart. And this man with a gun in his mouth, this man who, like me, is really little more than a boy, may or may not have something to do with it. May or may not have said a thing or two, betrayed a secret, say, that walked my love away. And why not say it? She adored me. And I, her. More than anyone, anything in life up to then, and then still for 2 decades after, and therefore went or broke. Blacked out and woke, having gutted my piggy and pawned all my gold to buy what a homeboy said was a Beretta. Blacked out and woke, my hand on a gun, the gun in a mouth, a man who was really a boy on his knees. And because I loved the girl, I actually paused before I pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times. Then panicked not just because the gun jammed, but because what if it hadn't? Because who did I almost become there that afternoon in a Section 8 apartment parking lot, pistol cocked with the sad flower stem. Because I knew a girl I knew, no matter how this all worked out, would never have me found. Day of damaged ammo or grime, they called the chamber. Day of faulty rods or springs come loose in my fist. Day, nobody died. So why not hallelujah? Say amen or thank you. My mother sang for years of God, babes, and fools. My father, lymph node masses fading from his x-rays, said surviving one thing means another comes and kills him. He's dead, and so I trust him. Dead, and so I wonder years about the works I left undone. Boy, on his knees, a man now, risen, and likely plotting his long way back to him. But I touched my tool like the movie gangsters do and jumps back in my butt. Cold enough day to make a young man weep. Afternoon when everything or nothing changed forever. The dead rapper grunted, the bass line faded, my spirits whispered something from the trees. I left, then lost the pistol in a storm drain, somewhere between that life and this. Left the pistol in a storm drain, but never got around to wiping away the prints. So I said I wasn't going to talk much between the poems, but I think that is a show. When I said it doesn't smell bucket, or the actual bucket. I'm from LA, so out there, bucket is slang for Houthi, which is slang for Islamic, slang for so. This next poem, it's called On Negative Capability, and it's something that I mentioned earlier when I was talking to some of the grad students. Those who may not know, negative capability is a term coined by the English poet John Keats, used to describe what he thought was beautiful and necessary in poetry. And he described it as the ability to exist in uncertainty without any irritable reaching facts. The ability to exist in uncertainty without any irritable reaching at the fact of reason, meaning not just being okay with it, but embracing the unknown. And for him, it was a way of writing and also engaging the world. I write by that creed, I live by it, and I've been doing it since I was little, even before I had a family. And I think I'll say not much more than that on negative capability. White walls, mud flats, late night howling down a dark dirt road. Headlights killed and so the world gone flat, but for the two blunts lit, illuminating JoJo's fake gold grin. One girl each screaming from the back seat. We raced the red moon, raw dog the stars. His mama's car, my daddy's gun. Public enemy number one. 17 and simple, we wanna be hard rocks through rude boy fingers and gang signs at the sky. Blinded by the hot smoke rising like the sirens in the subwoofers. Blinded by the crotch funk rising from all our eager selves, we mashed in perfect murk, a city block's length at least toward God knows what, when, or why. Neither JoJo nor I nor our 2 dates screaming had a clue or even care with the black ahead held. Come road. Come night, come blackness and the cold, come havoc, come mayhem, come down, God, and see us, come bloodshot moon running alongside the ride as if to warn us away from, as if to run us straight into some jagged tooth and jackal throated roadside ditch. When JoJo gunned the gas, we pushed into that night like a nest of sleeping jaybirds, shaken loose and plunging. Between our screams, a hush so heavy we could almost hear what was waiting in the dark. On metaphor. In back of Daddy's closet, behind the cold and loaded pistol, I find a cedar box of snapshots. His company in camouflage, waving rifles, reaper, and middle fingers at the photographer, at you, and at me. And here, the full-lipped red bone he left in the world without a goodbye. Here, a strange boy with my father's forehead, same sullen eyes. Flip the photo, a stranger's name and dates that don't add, scrawled as if rushed, as if a fugitive's note slips quick to the future. When my mother walks in, I shove the box to the back of the shelf, say nothing of the red bone or the blood. I hand her instead the pistol, 45, I believe. Its cold barrel swelling in the room's bum light. When she angles it just so, I think I see my father reflected in the steel. Wait, no, not my father. It's me. This next poem is a little longer, so I'm gonna ask you to take with me. And it has a leading title. Means the title of these writings in the text. I'll read the title. My wife says I'll say special. This is poems that I can set up. I was just like. Say the poem. If you don't understand something, come up afterwards and ask her. Upon reading the air will be transcribed, even the calls of certain species of birds. I think first the two sparrows I met when walking home late night years ago in another city, not unlike this. The one bird frantic, attacking, I thought, the way she swooped down, circled my head, and flailed her wings in my face. How she seemed to scream each time I swung. How she dashed back and forth between me and the blood-red corolla parked near the opposite curve. How finally I understood. I spied another bird, also calling. His foot inexplicably caught in the car's closed door, beating his whole bird body against it, trying, it appeared, to bang himself free. And who knows how long he'd been there, flailing. Who knows? He and the other I mistook at first for a bat. They called something between squawk and chirp, something between song and prayer to do something, anything. And like any good God, I disappeared. Not indifferent exactly, but with things to do and most likely on my way home from another apartment. Call it 1997. And say I'm several thousand miles from home, by which I mean those were the days I made of everyone a love song. By which I mean I was lonely and unrequited. But that's not quite it either. Truth is, I did manage to find a few to love me, but couldn't always love them back. The Rasta law professor, the firefighter's wife, The burlesque dancer whose daughter blackened drawings with M's to mean the sky was full of birds the day her daddy died. I think his widow said he drowned one morning on a fishing trip. Anyway, I'm digressing. But if you ask that night, did I mention it was night? Why I didn't even try to jimmy the lock to spring the sparrow, I couldn't say truthfully that it had anything to do with envy, with wanting a woman to plead as deeply for me as these sparrows did, one for the other. No. I'd have said something instead about the neighborhood itself. The car thief shot a block and a half east the week before, or about the men I came across nights prior, sweat slicked and shirtless, grappling in the middle of the street, the larger one's chest pressed to the back of the smaller, bruised and bleeding boat. I know you thought this was about birds. Stay with me. I left them both in the street, the same street where I leave the sparrows, the men embracing, and for all one knows, they could have been lovers. The one whispering an old tune into the ear of the other, baby, baby, don't leave me this way. I left the men where I leave the sparrows and their song. And as I walked away, I heard one of the men call to me, please, or help, or brother, or some such. And I didn't retry, not one bit. It's how I've learned to save myself. Let me try this another way. Call it 1977 and say I'm back west, South Central Los Angeles. My mother and father at it again, but this time in the streets, broad daylight, and all the neighbors watching. One, I think his name was Sonny, runs out from his duplex to pull my father off. You see what I'm going with this? My mother crying out, fragile as a sparrow. Sonny fighting my father, fragile as a sparrow, and me, years later, trying to get it all down. As much for you, saying after me. Sonny catches a left, lies flat on his back, blood starting to pool in his own wife wailing, my mother wailing, and traffic backed now half a block. Horns, whistles, and soon sirens. 1977, summer, and all the trees full of birds. Hundreds, I swear. And since I'm the one writing it, I'll tell you they were crying. Which brings me back to Dolphy and his transcribing. The jazz man, I think, wanted only to get it down pure, to get it down exact. The animal racking itself against the car's steel door. The animals in the trees reporting, the animals we make of ourselves and one another, flailing, failing, stay with me. Days after the dust up, my parents took me to the park, and in this park was a pond. And in this pond were birds, not sparrows, but swans. And my father spread a blanket and brought from a basket some apples and a pear-nut. Summertime. My mother wore sunglasses, long sleeves. My father, now sober, cursed himself for leaving the radio. But my mother forgave him and said, as she caressed the back of his hand, that we could just listen to the swans. And we listened. And I watched. Two birds coupling, one beating its wings as it mounted the other. Summer, 1977, I listened and watched. When my parents made love late into that night, I covered my ears in the next room scanning the encyclopedia for swans. It meant nothing to me, then at least. But did you know the collective noun for swans is a lamentation? And is a lamentation not its own species of song? What a woman wails, punch drunk in the streets, or what a widow might sing, learning her man was drowned by swans, a lamentation of them. Imagine the capsized boat, the panicked man struck about the eyes, nose, and mouth each time he comes up for air. Imagine the birds coasting away and the waters suddenly calm, either trumpet swans or mutes. The dead man's wife running for help, crying to any who listen, a lamentation, and a city busy saving itself. I'm digressing, sure. But did you know that to digress means to stray from the flock? When I left my parents' house, I never looked back. By which I mean I made like a god and disappeared, as when I left the sparrows and the copulating swans, as when someday I'll leave this city, it's every flailing, it's every animal song. I don't know why we do this before, it's always do this. We went to a lot of poetry readings, so I always say, I got 2 poems left. And I don't know why, well, we don't say I got 3 poems left, I got 1 poem left, 2 is always the one. I have 2 poems left. And that's it's good news and bad news. The good news is I only have 2 left. The bad news is, as you brothers have, I really long poems. So I'm gonna read one long one and then one not so long. So I wasn't going to read this one, but I mentioned it earlier when I was talking to the MFA students about a poem that's been a while to write. And the reason I'm taking songs to write this is because, well, there's the thing about trying to get it right, but also I knew too early what the poem wanted to be about, right? And as I was explaining, often that's when we kind of run up against civil resistance or the poem is run away from that. But it did get finally was completed. And I don't think there's much I need to tell you about here. It's called On Probably. Dawn again. And this is what we wake to. Neighbors ruckus through our bedroom wall, a tussle, something breaking, and of course, the voices. This then is what we wake to almost every Sunday, no? Such fear, such chronic angers, same as those that haunted Robert Hayden. Here, this morning, I'm thinking more of Robert Frost, his letters, the sound of sense. What Frost says we can glean from pitch and speech and rhythms, hearing through a wall, not making out a single word. What neighbors say and mean. This morning, like the rest, they mean to hurt. A wife, her husband, fisticuffs and towels. We think they fight about the kids or unpaid bills, or fight because on mornings off they hear us too, not fighting. And remember, rapture then and rupture now. These offices of love, not meters, Frost said, but a meter making arguments. Or was that Emerson? In any case, we press our ears with glass against the wall and learn the man's not half the man his brother is. The wife's a whore, the husband swears he'll kill, like clockwork, same as any Sunday. Still, we call the cops, they come and go. Our neighbors break, then start again by dusk, and this is how we learn to measure time. Not hours, but each rage and all the intervals between. By now, I've told you all about my father's hands, his leather, All those nights, our neighbors must have thought I died. But there was quiet too. A Sunday just like this, my father sprawled across the couch. My mother, me, the black and white TV kept mute all afternoon. To anyone who might be listening, it could have been the Cleavers, Waltons, wrapped in Bible study, homework, corny arts and crafts, a slant of sunlight stabbing through the curtains, catching mom's good china, Fido's easy breathing. But you know me now, enough to know this ain't that story. Think instead a love song, if I can't have you, such. Our quiet broken into when the neighbors hit the high notes. Rumor was LaToya caught her husband creeping with the deacon's boy and made him choose. He broke things off or didn't, or denied the whole affair or didn't, or he might have tried to string them both along or wasn't clear enough to one or either till one day the lover shows up on his doorstep. High, they say, on angel dust and loneliness. A Sunday just like this. I'm 6, and so I'm keen to none of it. The details. This much I remember. A knock that shook my father from his sleep, a grown man's cry, a scuffle, muffled cuss and crash, and then the baby. Rain, like a small goat led to slaughter. I pressed my ear and then my chest and palms against the wall and took in all his suffering, all his fear, how one who leads said goat will feel his heartbeat through his chest and carry that for days. You can't put your hands, you can't scrub clean. Or like the boy I read of once, composer's son born deaf, who on the day his father died, replayed his father's favorite album, dusk to dawn, until the grooves wore smooth, and all the while he bit down on the speaker box's edge, so music traveled from his teeth along his jaw into his skull, so taken with the song, the boy himself became that song. So too did I, when pressed against the wall, become the room next door and everything it held. Each crashing dish, each welt and scratch, the odd caesura when the infant hit the wall. Something, Frost says, doesn't love God, but something too, goddammit, wishes walls within the walls and more walls after that. My mother called the cops. Of course, they came and went, but not before my father kicked the neighbor's door to splinters, beat the husband, lover, each perhaps, until the blue lights, red lights, painted every wall. Of course, the cops took all of them away. So too, the child and mother left for good, and left behind a silence I still carry, hands I can't scrub clean. So taken with the song, I am, in fact, the song. We wrap these sheets around us, soundless, lie here as a shelter, as if so much wood and gypsum, nails and peeling paint might keep next door. As if I hadn't brought here to this room, into this bed, these hands and all they've worn. And maybe this is, insofar as there's a point, the point. Forgive my rambling, and the sun is breaking in. It's dawn again, and you should rest. Besides, they're done next door. For now, no shrieks, no shouts, no other brutal music. Dawning. And lying, we can hear the city wake. One homeboy hails another. Trash trucks groan and sigh. 2 grapples greet, then call across the rooftops to an ugly cousin. All indoors though, this or that side of the wall is hushed, half light. This next day coming on like all the ones before. This hushed half life that finds our neighbors lying, maybe same as us, her breasts against his back, his chest against her back, two knees now nestled tight to the crooks of other knees, his joining on as he caresses just like this, a temple, same as any Sunday. When I slip my arm half numb from underneath you, you stir and almost wink. I take myself and all my troubles to the window, light this blunt, then watch the block. Another day with you, and not a clue where we might be. So thank you for listening. Y'all good? I was saying to someone recently, after the pandemic, I've heard comedians talk about this too, how it feels strange sometimes to be with people and reading poems aloud, and probably for you as well, listening to someone. You know, for 2 years, we were just reading and squares on a screen, right? And kind of interacting that right? So it takes a while to get everything back, I think. So we're less than deal with that. It wasn't too bad. I'm going to end with the last poem in the book. Variation on the theme by the employees GIG. It was all a dream. I used to read Agni magazine. Martina Spada, Comaniaca, Philip Levine. Gripped by dreams of growing to rock a rhyme, picked up steam when I seen where a nickel cost a dime. Spent my time weekdays and weekends thinking of ways of freaking the New York. Thursdays were my worst days because I had my workshop. Work paid. Now I seek the limelight, hope my rhymes might take me from born sinner to fancy award winner. From sardines for dinner, straight to champagne toasts, gala seats, meet and greets, all down the East Coast. Changed my ways, now it's all in the reach, till I pinned my nigga pain and they snatched my seat. Well, no, that no. So, some questions for John?
John, how are you? If that's rusty, I don't, that's what I aspire to, that kind of rust. Hey, so I was with my students the other day, I teach nonfiction, as you know, and, but we were looking at, they wrote a few poems and we were looking at them. And, I didn't know, we were talking about like, how does one edit a poem? Because in my mind, anything goes. And I'm wondering, can you give us a 2-minute masterclass on how does one edit a poem?
Wow, 2 minutes less. Anything goes in, but then if you want the poem to be a good poem, so something have to come out. So the short of it is, you know, it's like a conversation that you wish you would have had. That's the editing process, right? So you all have the experience of having had a conversation, then walking away from that conversation and thinking, oh, I wish I had said this or wish I had said that. Well, editing or revising gives you the opportunity to say those things you wish you would have said, and then say it again better later. So, and the process is different from poet to poet, from poem to poem. So, for me, and a lot of poems that I learn from and admire, it's not getting as much down on the page as possible, and then finding all that language where the poetry actually lives. And so a lot of it is sculpting away, getting rid of this, adding, right? And then spending time with the poem and listening to it, waiting for it to tell you what it wants to do. Allowing your ear to kind of guide you, and also allowing you to surprise yourself. Robert Frost mentioned in one of the poems says, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. Right? So you think about poetry, or I love you to start to write poems maybe as language distilled or really compressed, right? And in a way where everything that you leave on the page should be delivered, should mean to be there. And then you'll find that doing that will also benefit the prose form. Bring those same practices back into your prose, then everything that ends up there is what should be there as well. Right? You don't want a whole lot of filler. I have a question for my man in the back. I don't have my glasses on. I see Los Angeles. Is that making shit?
Yeah.
Where? Yes, we know. Oh, no, I was then. Oh, that's all. That's what we got to make it for.
Hello, hi. My question is, how much does your delivery matter in your poems? Like when you say them out loud, how much does the delivery matter?
A lot. I read my poems aloud, as I'm revising, because I want the poems to live on the page and in the earth, right? So I'm thinking about that while I'm writing. I think the poem that you hear aloud is different experience from the poem you read in the book. There are certain things that, there are advantages to each. You read a poem in a book, you have the opportunity to go and look up references, right? Spend time with a line and shoot it, make the meaning doesn't reveal itself. First read, you have time to consider. The poem in the air is other opportunities. One, the breath, the music, those things kind of push to the forefront. Those really important. Now there are poems that second to last poem I read, the prosody. I read that out much. So what happens often is when you write a poem, even if I'm reading it aloud while I'm revising, the experience of having given a reading a few times and spending time with the poems, you learn where to take a breath, where the pauses are, in a way that you may not even be aware of when you're actually putting anything on it. So it's a different way of engaging an other, but also it's a way for you to engage with work. So, thank you.
Do you have any writing ritual?
I do, when I'm on, I do. I try to get up early, right? It's hard for me to write, my wife's away from the house. So, she does live there. And therefore, I'll set my alarm early, right? And I'll try to write before people go. And also I was saying that we'll use the MFA group. I think there's like a poetry energy in my house. And she likes to work on this, I do, so I do, and so I use it today. So, and I think the poetry energy in the house likes her better than likes me. So I get up early and spend time with it before I go on to your work. But no, the ritual just comes to the page from when I see the chair, right? And that's the, I was saying earlier to the students, I don't know if this is a superstition of mine, but I think that those times when a poem wants to visit me, if I'm not at the chair with the pen in my hand, right, then nobody's home. I'll go upstairs, right? So I try to show up every day. I write, even if it's not going anywhere. I need that frustration. I think that my anxiety builds up, leads to the poems I really actually love. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. In terms of actually getting something down on page, I like to work with prompts a lot. And one thing I might do is open up a book of poems by somebody else, take a line and use that as the first line and write from there, knowing that eventually I'll come back and erase that. I see what I have next. Or I'll write in response to work of art or memory. I'll start small and try to see where that takes me. And then the rest of it is just reading. I read a lot more than I write. And I think that feeds the book as well.
When you write a lot of conceptual poetry, how do you avoid it coming off as perhaps so vague when rejecting that poetic strangeness on this coming from personal and vivid memory?
That's where the revision process comes in, right? when you're first getting something down, it's gonna be say, right? And another thing, right? And then, you know, come back and look at it, you know, this line is sloppy, right? It needs to be writing some movie else, right? I need to make up this rant poem, right? And then you bring all the tools, all the reading you've ever done to that page, that line, and when you go about it, well, that way. And then also, you know, there's confession, there's confessional poetry, right? I think the poet needs to be mindful that the writing is, right? And so, there's the something in journals, you do that when you need to, but if you're going to write a poem that, you hope others will read and enjoy, then you have to apply the practice to that confession. And then also, in that same vein, in keeping the poem the most important thing, sometimes the confession itself is the problem, right? So, if I confess to having stolen a Snickers bar from the local CVS when I was 13 years old, I did that when I was maybe I don't need the word Snickers, right? Maybe in real life it's Snickers, but maybe Twix is the sound that line needs, right? And maybe Twix, because I'm looking for that Twix sound. Now I have two of that on the right side. I can break it up and talk about sharing with the plan. It never happened in real life, and now what form's demanding is moving away from the confession, right? So it's a matter of making the poem the point and using the confession so it gets.
Hello, and thank you so much for I have a question about your first poem that you read tonight, about there was no river and there was no field. Could you speak to a sense of place in your work? Like, do you feel like your work belongs to a specific environment or transcends it, like allows you to go elsewhere? I mean, yeah, how does like different?
I've lived all over the place. So I grew up in LA, and we moved to a place called the Inland Empire, which is out like West Monroe, so they're kind of something. Then I went to DC and I lived there for like 7 years. I was in Chicago, here, Miami, everywhere. So my landscape, my store of images is really kind of weird, right? So when I'm writing from the imagination, and I think I write more from imagination than memory. Even when I think I'm writing from memory, I'm making up a whole lot of stuff. Sure. Sometimes the details be confused, right? And part of the process is in sorting those out. So that poem, I think when I was rapping early on, I think I didn't have a written there, and it's hard. And the river may not have been one of my own, but I think I'm reading someone else, which I don't want to do. Right. So when I'm reading, I'm watching movies or TV shows. The one poem on professionalism, the first poem, I just realized this the other day. I mentioned, so there was an incident that happened when I was in Brazil, but I didn't talk to a gun in a storm drain. I just thought back to the guy that someone's cool, right? But I've been watching The Wire, right? And you know, so when eBay had shot Omar, things that was I think they went from storm drain on our bus. So storm drain, I know we had storm drain, but ended up at home, right? So it's one of those things too, where I'm my landscape, my next landscape, water, and all of things. Sometimes it gets me in trouble. In my first book, I'm not sure, you know, like people call me and stuff. So like in my first book, I have a poem, Sherman Avenue Love Poem, and I mentioned brownstone in that poem. There's no brownstone in Sherman Avenue. The poem takes place in Blue Sea, right? But I hear the sound brownstone, right? So I wrote with my ear, but then it created an image that wasn't really going with that's the. So it's all over the place. That's the motion.
Thank you.
One more. Yeah. Hi, sir. Both you and your wife are fantastic. So it's such wonder what that was like living with a fellow writer that you may be in competition with, or you know, working with, I don't know. It's all right. No, well, first, there's no competition, it's, how do I say? That'll be done, you know what I mean, like, because it's, you know, they're just looking at the label, you know, so we just, you know, we, respect each other and, are very mindful of each other's time and we very present. And also we can vent to each other, you know, and I think it's important. I asked one of our teachers a long time ago when we were still engaged. At the time, he'd been married for 50 years, and I asked him, you know, he had any advice for where, and he said, "Yeah, just choose the right person." Thanks. So sweet. But he's right, you know. I mean, you always think you choose the right person, right? But so it's almost so commonsensical as to be useless information or advice. But if you do that, then it's never what, right? A lot of these things come take care of themselves. So I think we've been really fortunate that we've chosen, each of us has chosen someone who understands and feels it's right. It's always trying to make room and space for the other. And it's been cool.
Let's give John a big round of applause. Books will be on sale and I'll be signing books. Thanks so much for being here and thanks for coming.